When we talk about Nick Saylor, some of you think this is Nick Saylor, and you're wrong. This is Nick Saylor. No, he's not developed in a lab. He's one of the nicest guys in Major League Wiffle. Also funniest. Also once one of the most feared hitters in the league. But his 2023 season, quite frankly, has just been bad, and today we're going to figure out why that is. A little bit background on Nick Saylor for those unfamiliar with him. He was drafted with the 3rd overall pick in the 2020 Major League Wiffle draft by the Western Wildcats. He was drafted with the hopes that he will pair up with arguably the greatest player of all time, Kyle Schultz, to form a 1-2 punch on the top of the lineup and help the Wildcats win the World Series once again. For the first 3 years of his career, he has lived up to expectations. In 2020, he led the league in hits and RBI, was 6th overall in the MLW in OPS+, 7th overall in hitting WAR at 2.0, and these numbers are all with the fact he played 3 of the 22 games with literally one hand due to injury. In 2021, he was even more special. In just 22 games, he hit 17 home runs, had a 203 OPS+, had a 3.4 hitting WAR, won co-MVP with Jimmy Nork, almost won the World Series if it wasn't for the fact he just decided to chuck the ball away for literally no reason in Game 3 of the World Series. And to put into context how special his 2021 season was, there's been only 6 players in MLW history to have ever hit 200 OPS+ in a single season. That is the greatest of all time, Kyle Schultz, who did it twice. 2019 MVP Noah Dabico, probably one of the greatest hitters of all time, Jimmy Nork, who also did it twice. Grant Miller in 2023, who put up the greatest season of all time. Jordan Robles in 2023 also did it, and he's regarded as one of the best, if not the best, wiffle ball players in the world. That's how special Nick Saylor's season was. His 2022 season wasn't as good, but he also still put up a 1.5 WAR, which is good for 10th in the league, 8th in OPS+, and by the end of the 3rd season, he had 6.9 hitting WAR. That is actually 10th all time, and that helped you kind of gain a picture. He wasn't just special, he was historically special. But in 2023, somehow, he established a career low in just about every single statistical category, had a 0.0 WAR, which basically means that he is as good as someone who has been sitting on the bench all season. He struggled 49.3% of the time in 2023, when the league strikeout rate was 42.2%, so he struggled a lot. So, to put it in context in MLB terms, Nick Saylor was basically Cody Bellinger on the Dodgers. That he was historically good, and then he became historically bad. Why so? Well, Western Wildcats fans probably remember the instant classic that is the 2023 American League Championship Series against the Pacific Predators, a series where I think many Western Wildcats fans probably didn't expect to be close, but somehow it was an absolute 3-game thriller. Well, for everybody other than Nick Saylor. Nick Saylor was simply just swinging and missing at anything that Ryan Crouch offers, and a lot of those pitches are actually drop pitches. And that kind of gives maybe sort of an inkling that maybe Nick Saylor hitting drop pitches is an issue. Well, let's look at it for a second, shall we? So in this study, we took all the pitches that Nick Saylor faced over the 4 years. We deleted some of the pitches. We took out 2020 regular season series 1 because it was played at Coles Field and also had a little bit of speed gate issues, with pitches being a little bit too fast, which was not a scandal, but those pitches are simply not representative of the pitches that Nick Saylor faced the rest of his career. Also took out 2020 ALDS because that was a series where he literally batted with one hand. And I also took out what I'm going to classify as position player pitching, basically pitchers who has barely pitched in a year and was called onto the mound to pitch. Those I am also not counting. For the rest of the pitches, I separate them into roughly 4 families: riser/fastball, and this also includes a limited amount of 2-seam action, screwball, slider, and drops out pitches. And then I track how much of each pitch Nick Saylor has faced, his OPS+ against those pitches, and his strikeout rate against those pitches. So let's just look at the usage for a second. And this is where things got slightly unserious. So first and foremost, we're going to completely disregard screwball for the rest of the study because upon tracking, one thing I realized is that Nick Saylor really barely faced any screwball pitches. So let's just take that out for a second. Other than that, in 2020, when he came into the league, he was seeing roughly equal amounts of fastballs, slider, and drop pitches. And then in 2021, you can see his drop pitches started to increase. And then in 2022 and 2023, 61% and 56% of the pitches, respectively, were drop pitches. And that might give you an idea. Maybe you can hypothesize that maybe Nick Saylor's regression in 2022 and then 2023 has something to do with the drops. Let's look at it. One thing upon inspection that we can see is that Nick Saylor has been very special against riser and slider pitches. He put up 186 OPS plus and 206 OPS plus against those two pitches. To put into context, these are roughly the numbers that the Pittsburgh era Barry Bonds would put up. So quite frankly, Hall of Fame level. There are some years where he wasn't as good against those pitches, but it might be just small sample size. So we'll kind of disregard that a little bit. But when we go to drop style pitches, this is where things become really problematic. In 2020, he put up a 318 OPS plus against drop style pitches. That is the San Francisco era Barry Bonds level numbers. And to put it in context, Grant Miller in 2023 put up arguably the greatest hit-in season of all time. His OPS plus that year was 293. Yeah, so Nick Saylor was better than historically good against drop pitches in 2020. In 2021, 2022, he was sort of average. And then in 2023, he had a 2 OPS plus against drop pitches. To put it into context, remember 100 OPS plus is league average. 2022, Jack Adler had a 3 OPS plus that season, and people were calling him to retire. Nick Saylor against drop style pitchers was even worse. Like, how? And he also struck out more than 60% of the time against those drop pitches. So at this point, maybe that explains it. But one of the things that may confuse you at this point is that how did Nick Saylor went from historically good against drop style pitches to historically terrible? Well, when we think about a pitch, usually a pitch consists of two things: the type of pitch and the location of the pitch. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. In 2020 and 2021, over half the pitches that Nick Saylor faced were either at the top of the zone or above the zone. That is not the case in 2022 and 2023. He's seen more pitches everywhere else than pitches at the top of the zone. And that might explain why Nick Saylor has regressed. Maybe his regression has something to do with the fact that he's just a good hitter against pitches top or above the zone and not good after. One thing to note why I'm saying this is that of the 310 pitches that was tracked over the 4 years, 58 of those are actually above the zone pitches. Essentially, Nick Saylor looked at or swinging at a pitch that was a ball above the top of the zone. That could suggest that he has historically been very aggressive against those pitches and he knows that is his strength and is performing well and just kept going. Let's see if that is true. Well, it turns out it is. His career OPS plus against pitches top of the zone and above the zone was 230. He was Barry Bonds against high pitches. And everywhere else, well, in 2020, he was still pretty good. 147 OPS plus, that is still like number one hitter numbers. And then he started to basically regress every single year. And in 2023, when the final pitch of the at bat wasn't top of the zone or above the zone, he had a negative OPS plus and struck out 3/4 of the time. He was essentially useless if those numbers don't mean much to you. Now, so we know he's somewhat weak against drop pitches. He was somewhat weak against pitches that are not top of the zone or above it. What if we just combine those two factors? Well, that actually also tells you something. Because Nick Saylor was actually a career 224 OPS plus hitter against pitches, dropped pitches specifically, that are up in the zone or above it. In 2023, his performance against those type of pitches wasn't good, but one thing I did notice when I was tracking the data is that he was striking out looking a lot on drop pitches top of the zone. So that might suggest his regression in 2023 might have to do with the fact that he just wasn't as aggressive as he needs to against pitches top of the zone and above it. And to return to form, he simply needs to be more aggressive against those. But there's actually a bigger problem here. His OPS plus against dropped pitches that are not top of the zone or above it was 9, -37, and -48 respectively in those years. And he's striking now 3/4 of the time against those pitches. I don't think a -48 OPS plus really explains how bad he is. Let's return to traditional stats for a second. This is where things get completely unserious. Over the 3 years shown here, Nick Saylor has 71 plate appearances against drop pitches that are not top or above the zone. He walked 11 times, struck out too many times to count, but more importantly, had 4 hits. Not a single one of them being home runs, and struck out 3/4 of the time. Like, in 2023, he didn't even get a single hit against these pitches. And remember in 2020, when I talked about the fact that he was sort of pretty decent against pitches that are not top or above the zone? Well, I looked at it a little bit more closely. All but 3 of those pitches are actually in the middle of the zone. So in other words, if you throw a pitch that is at the bottom or below the zone, Nick Saylor basically swings and misses at all of them. Wow. Well, now the question is, now what? Right? If you're a pitcher against Saylor, I think there's only one acceptable tactic. Just throw drop pitches to Saylor, make sure you locate it well, below the zone or bottom of the zone. You'd rather miss low than to miss high. If you can do that, Nick Saylor is basically useless. If you're Saylor, now what? I kind of alluded to it at various times throughout this process. Maybe he should be more aggressive against pitches top of the zone or above the zone. Or to even more, he should be aggressive in trying to catch these pitches up high. Because if you remember what a drop looks like, a drop takes time to drop. So if he can just be early to those pitches and just like catch those pitches up high, he is a 200 OPS plus hitter. That's pretty good. And if though he can't make those contact, well, it's not gonna whether he tries to catch it out in front or try and let the ball travel a little bit more. It doesn't make a difference. He's equally as terrible. So for Saylor, quite frankly, the way to fix him, to fix his performance against pitchers with really violent movements, is to just be more aggressive. Now, if that wasn't Wildcats, now what? You have a hitter who was completely exposed in 2023. You don't know if he's going to be good in 2024. And you have 2 picks, pick number 1 and pick number 3. The suggestion, use it. You don't know if Saylor's going to be good. You want to return to a World Series, you want to win, get 2 hitters, solidify your lineup, create competition, and help each other get better. Don't trade one of the picks for Brandon Zerda, who was recently put on a block, please. Now, very quickly, I want to give credits to finish off. A lot of analytics terms used is thanks to Sean Huff, who has spent a lot of his time putting together what is MLW reference. Basically, an encyclopedia of all the players' performance over the years. If you're a little bit confused about terms I mentioned, I would also recommend checking his material out. He also explains those very well. At various times through the project, we also had a chance to discuss my findings, which I'm very thankful of. Also, ECK's pitch breakdown on Instagram, ECK.sports. I also use it to understand some of the pitcher's arsenal. Didn't go into detail because I'm less good at differentiating pitches than him, but it also gives me an idea of roughly what pitches are, and I'm very thankful to be able to use this work. So yeah, that's it.